episode of First Down by CoachTools. Today I'm here with Coach Jake Franklin from Frisco, Texas. Thanks for coming on, Coach.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always love talking to you.
Yes, sir. So Coach Franklin, he's most recently spent his third year coaching high school football, and before his coaching days, he was actually a quarterback at Grapevine Faith High School in Texas,
Yes,
and then was also a college player. So to kind of dive into the content, Coach, as you're a content creator for coaches, obviously in addition to being a coach,
yeah.
you've most recently published a book called Dual Threat. So would you be able to talk a little bit about the book and how you utilizing like quarterbacks as a run threat can ultimately like impact the dynamic of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to write Dual Threat because over the past couple of years, I've seen how running the quarterback and utilizing the quarterback as a run threat or as a dual threat can really give you an advantage against a team that might be bigger, faster, and stronger than you. It makes football a true 11 on 11 game. And then maybe even 11 on 10 or 11 on 9 if you mix in some option in there too. So that was kind of what sparked me. That's what made me want to write this book, was just because I saw how much having a running quarterback and having plays that run your quarterback can help you out as an offensive coordinator, and then also just make your team better. So there's in the book, Dual Threat, there's a bunch of Oregon in there, Coastal Carolina. There's a handful of schools that use the quarterback a ton, North Dakota State. And it's just interesting watching those teams and seeing how whenever they run the quarterback, instead of the QB handing the ball off and carrying out a fake, and there's a +1 defender, you can use that running back to go block, kick a guy out, or you can mesh with the running back, read the D end, and make it a true 11 on 11 game. So that's where that passion came from to write this book.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So how did you use your playing experience as like a catalyst to jump in, I guess, first off the coaching and then into the content creation game?
Yeah. Man, playing wise, if you watch me play, you would never call me a dual threat guy. I was nowhere near that. Very slow 40 pocket passer. I could make good reads and throw the football in the right spot most of the time. So I never had, for my playing time, I never had any sort of sense of a dual threat guy. But whenever I started coaching, we had a quarterback, he had Legacy Christian Academy, who could run. And it was then I'm like, man, when we use the quarterback to run, we're picking up like solid gains every single time. We'll run power read, GT counter read, all this different stuff that made our offense better. And it was by running the quarterback. And that's when it started. So when it started dawning on me, I'm like, man, I need to dive more into quarterback run game. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's really how I started thinking about writing dual threat. And so that was a couple of years ago. So it's been a process building up to this point.
Could you share some specific examples of maybe some plays that have worked really well for you, or some plays that haven't, and your experience with those?
Yeah. Man, really, when it comes to the plays that work, we're looking at least looking back at previous experience coaching at the high school level. We're looking at the best player, the best defensive lineman, who's the hardest to block, and then how do we end up reading him, or how can we manipulate that guy to take him away from the game. And so power read was one of our best plays. We'd read the best defensive end, and we run power read at him over and over. And we are consistently picking up 5 to 6 yards a play in a couple games, just running that. And we ran it, like 6, 7, 8 times a game. And it just kept working. I'm like, man, I wish it was always this easy. But most of the time, the DM would widen with a running back running horizontally, and then our quarterback would take it up. And he was such an athlete, he was able to fall forward every time and pick up a lot of yards doing that.
Okay, got it. So what's the process of really like honing in on those plays, and maybe maybe even doubling down on a play that does work really well for you.
Yeah, I think you just got, if a play's working, you just got to keep running it. It sounds simple, but it's true. I forgot who it was. It might have been Georgia Southern a few years back. They lined up in like a quads diamond sort of formation, and they ran the same play 3 or 4 times in a row. And it was just a quick screen. And the defense didn't adjust. I think they only had 3 guys over the quad side, and they just kept throwing a screen over and over and over until I think the defense either had to call a timeout or they scored. It's been a while since I've watched that film, but man, if getting dialed in, keep calling the plays that work. Don't go away from something if it keeps on working. That's where I've struggled before, is I go away from a play that might be working to try something new. It backfires, and then by the time you realize what you did, the game's it's too late. The game's almost over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the old adage: if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. It's more so, I think coaches overthink the game a lot, and so do I. Just do what works, and it sounds so easy, and it's not easy, but it is. If something's working, just keep coming back to it.
Well, really, it's very hard.
No, it is.
Yeah,
it is. Absolutely.
Yeah. So diving in a little bit more to the quarterback play, like what do you think some key characteristics or traits of a successful quarterback are?
As far as a successful running quarterback, like in dual threat, he has to understand where the run's supposed to hit. Like looking back in college, I understood, what angle I had to turn and set my feet to hand the ball off, but I didn't understand like what was happening in the box and what the offensive line when we were running counter, power, trap, inside zone, outside zone. All I knew was hand it off to the running back, open a little bit wider here, open up more narrow here, and then carry out my fake. Now, looking back, even if I was not the fastest guy, if I understood what the run is designed to do, whether it was designed to hit inside or outside, then I could still pick up some yards, because instead of trying to carry it outside on counter, I could carry it inside on the kick out and wrap. And so I think if you're going to be a good running quarterback, you've got to understand the whole run concept, what everyone's doing, and then also what defense you're going up against. Is it a 4-3? Do they have 2-4 eyes? I mean, there's a bunch of different things you gotta understand. But once you start understanding what's happening in the whole scheme of things, it makes you a better runner, because you can start predicting on where the hole is going to open up before it does, just based off the box and how it looks. So I think that's really important as a running quarterback and running back too.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, it's anything else. The more that you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So it's
For
like,
sure.
For you specifically in your playing days as maybe just a passing, like a pocket passer.
Yeah.
What do you think would be able to help somebody like you maybe who can't run the ball? Or
I think what would help a quarterback who's not the fastest, isn't super mobile. I think you got to understand how to get the ball out quick. You got to see things before they happen. And that's the biggest thing I really had to rely on, was I had to know what coverages they're going to be in, and then based off those coverages before the play, who's most likely to be open. And then once the ball was snapped, then you had to verify that what you thought was going to be true. You can't predetermine a snap, but you can have an idea of what's going to be open before the ball is snapped. So a lot of times they try to disguise coverages, but if you're watching your film and if you're fully prepared, then you know that they might be rolling to a cover 3, even if they have 2 high safeties. And so I think the best thing that you can do as a quarterback who might not be mobile is just understand defensive coverages and prepare well, and just like know it inside and out, and don't even just know your own offensive scheme, but just study the game of football, and you're going to become way more comfortable going against different kinds of coverages and defenses. And that's one thing I wish I could go back and change, is I wish I studied more, especially during the offseason. I just wish I studied the game like I do now, because if I went back in nowadays, which I never will again, I'll be a whole lot better of a quarterback. My percentage, completion percentage would be higher. Throw more touchdowns. We'd move the ball more, less punts. And that just all comes from preparation and just understanding the game entirely.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And I think for me, when I was a player, I was an offensive lineman, which a little obviously different, but when
Yeah.
you really break it down, it's all the same. It's like the more that you truly understand the specific nuances and how defenses are going to react to what you do,
Yeah.
then you can anticipate you'd be able to anticipate anything that comes your way. And it's like you'll already know what's going to happen. Like, even though you won't, like, you'll kind of know what's going to happen before it happens
For sure.
because you'll know how the defense reacts to you.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right. You can have an idea of what side they're going to slant to just based off of watching film. And again, if you go in there cold, bad things will happen. You won't be prepared. But if you have an idea, you can trust your game plan and then verify it post snap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So beyond preparation and obviously studying the game, what else would you recommend to maybe a young quarterback or a younger coach who's just going to get into it?
For a younger quarterback, I would say like you got to work fundamentals. There's a lot of quarterback coaches out there nowadays who are coaching the quarterback position way different than how I learned. I was way over the top. Now they're coaching a little bit lower of an arm slot coming out. But regardless of how you throw, I think it's so important to understand mechanics and have a healthy throwing motion. Just because when the game starts, you can't be thinking about how you're going to throw. How's my footwork going to work out? That's just got to be second nature, and that again comes into the preparation part. It's like you gotta prepare all year long, both mechanics and then also the X's and O's of things. And then for a younger coach, just getting into it, I think the biggest thing, it's easier said than done, is don't be afraid to ask questions. Again, like I said, when I was in college, I didn't understand run scheme, like what was actually happening in front of me. I just understood my job, and that was it. And so whenever I got into coaching, man, now I got to know the rules for counter, power, trap, all pin and pull, all these different run schemes. Shouldn't I know this by now? And that's what I thought. But I started asking questions, shooting DMs to the certain coaches I've built a relationship with, texting my old coaches, and then a lot of it was just like, man, I don't want to ask what pin and pull is and how it works. And so I just started watching clinics and discovering it on my own. And so my biggest advice for a younger coach would just be, man, ask as many, soak it all up. You have a lot more grace, at least from my perspective as a younger coach, than I would if I were 50 years old and asking a bunch of questions, just
Right.
This is your best opportunity. People understand that you're new to the profession. So soak it all up while you can, because when you're 5 years in, it might not be received the same way. Like, you should know this by now, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And I think the more that you learn, the more that you realize you don't know. And it's
Exactly.
I think it's a continuum where you just have to continuously learn and get better.
For sure. And I think your questions, as you get deeper into coaching, become more specific and more detailed. And so while your questions as a younger coach may be way more basic, like what are the rules for inside zone, way down the road, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, it doesn't take that long to learn. Even 2, 3 years down the road, your questions will be much more specific and much more mature as well. So yeah, you never know everything. You never stop learning. The more you know, the less you realize you do know, like you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. And as to kind of wrap things up, Coach, is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience? Just about yourself, or maybe advice in general?
Yeah. Advice in general is just if you're a player, enjoy the time. It goes by quick, and you're gonna look back and wish you could do it again. And then if you're a coach, man, remember how it felt to be a player and really pour into the kids and coach like you wish you could have been coached, or like you liked being coached. Football is a great game, and it opens up a lot of doors. And some of the best memories from life come from football. So really soak it all up, because once it's over, it's over. You can't get that time back. And you know, I understand that the feeling of, you know, at school, and I got practice, it's 100 degrees, it's gonna suck. But you look back and you don't remember the heat, but you remember the fun and the things and memories you have out on the field with your buddies and then your coaches as well. So just don't take it for granted is what I would say.